Hey guys, today we will see a fantastic game played between Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov. This game was played in 1993 in Linares, Spain, and at that time it was considered as the best game published in Informant 57. Even today, this game is recognized as a highly instructive game. Garry Kasparov's attacking skills are on full display here. So let's start this beautiful game. D4, Karpov is white and he opens with D4. Knight F6, C4, G6, Knight C3, Bishop G7. So we find Kasparov's favorite King's Indian here. E4, T6, F3. Karpov chooses Samish variation against Kasparov. Now, this Samish variation is quite a flexible variation. That is, white can choose to go on a king side onslaught with G4, H4, H5 and castle long, or he can just play in the center and queen side by castling short. So let us see what Karpov will do here. Castles, bishop e3, e5. Well, now at present the most popular move here is c5. Here black sacrifices a pawn for long term compensation, and most of the super grandmasters who face Samish variation prefer this pawn sacrifice. Well, Kasparov chooses e5, knight ge2, c6. Now this variation was considered a relatively weak variation when Kasparov played it, but this game changed everything overnight. Queen d2, knight d7, rook d1. Now at that time this move was considered to give white an advantageous position because it was felt that the pressure along the queen file was too much for black. A6, pawn takes pawn. Now white is opening up the queen file and he is planning to go for a long lasting pressure. Knight takes pawn. This is the novelty. So on move 10 we find a new move by Kasparov. Earlier pawn takes pawn, that is, this move was quite common, but Kasparov goes for a novelty, knight takes pawn. Now it looks that the d6 pawn will come under heavy pressure here, but Kasparov is planning a brilliant counter attack. At the moment it is not possible for white to capture d6 because the c4 pawn is hanging. So first he will have to protect it with b3. b5. Kasparov again goes for counter attack on c4 pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Pawn takes pawn. And now white can pick up the d6 pawn, which he does. Queen takes pawn. Now if white can manage to exchange queens, then that will not be nice for black, because then this counter attack on queen side, then it will become weak. So it is necessary to prevent this exchange of queens, and therefore Kasparov goes for knight f d7. Now it is a multi-purpose move. Actually two main purposes. First of all, it protects the e5 knight and also it prevents the exchange of queens. Now this is a decisive mistake. Now f4, it gives an opportunity to go all out on queen side, and since Karpov's king is still in center, it is not advisable here. It seems that Karpov's famous sixth sense deceived him here. Okay, so let us see how Kasparov exploits this unnecessary aggression. b4. What a brilliant move. This brilliant move turned the tables, and now it is Karpov who will have to go back. So let us see what is the beauty of this move. First of all, uh, Karpov cannot capture this pawn. The reason is if he goes for queen takes pawn, then c5. Now bishop takes pawn, knight takes bishop, rook takes queen, and knight d3 check. So after this check, white will have to return the queen. So now say for example if he goes king d1, knight takes queen. Now when we look at the board, we find that black is a solid piece up and white has no compensation against it. Okay, so it is not possible to go for queen takes b4, and therefore after b4 white has to solve a puzzle that where should this knight on c3 go. Another possibility is knight a4, but again there is a problem. Let us see what the problem is. Rook takes knight, pawn takes rook, knight c4. Now there is an attack on queen as well as on bishop. So suppose he goes for queen d3, knight b2. Now black gets the exchange back. Say for example queen d2, knight takes rook, queen takes knight, queen a5, threatening b3 discovered check. Now look at this position. The material is almost equal and black has very aggressive intentions. White is lacking in development, the king in center. So overall there is a very big huge positional plus for black. So naturally Karpov avoided this as well. So after b4 he went for knight b1. Okay, so the knight has to retreat, and now Kasparov saves his knight by knight g4, attacking the e3 bishop. Bishop d4, bishop takes bishop, queen takes bishop, rook takes pawn. Now this rook is on the 7th rank and it will cause so many problems for white. So he goes for h3. Now since this knight is also very aggressively positioned here, so Karpov decides to kick it back. Now Kasparov comes with another bright counter-attacking move, c5. And now it is very difficult for Karpov to find a satisfactory square for this queen. Say for example he decides to go for queen d5, then we have knight e3 fork. So he will have to give up exchange. Or suppose he decides queen c4, again knight e3, again there is a fork, and say he wants to go queen d3, then this again. So the queen is again not positioned well here, because after knight f6 then there can be bishop a6 anytime. Although relatively speaking this was least bad of all options, but Karpov chose the second best square for his queen by retreating to queen g1. Not a proud moment for the queen or Karpov either. Well, in any case, now Kasparov has to think about this knight. But knight gf6, the knight retreats to a safe square and at the same moment it attacks the center pawn. e5. Karpov has to save this center pawn, because otherwise once this pawn goes, then the king is further exposed. So e5, knight e4. Now just have a look at this position when Kasparov plays knight e4. Let's go back a step. So at this position, can you believe that according to Stockfish, there are as many as 24 different moves which gave a winning advantage to black. Oh my god. very difficult to believe. I could not believe. I checked again and again. There are 24 different moves which give a winning advantage to black here, and Kasparov plays knight e4, and this is not even among the top 10 options of stockfish. Unbelievable. So this is, it means that this game is so one-sided at this point. Very rare for a Karpov Kasparov game. H4. Now this looks like a weird move. So let's try to understand this. What actually Karpov is trying to accomplish with this move, H4. Now first of all, he Karpov has a great positional understanding, and he knows that he is not in a position to attack black. So why he is playing h4 here? The reason is that first of all, in many lines, it prevents queen h4 check, which in many cases can be very dangerous, particularly after this exchange sacrifice of rook takes knight. So first of all, h4 prevents this check, queen h4 check. Another thing is that after h4, he can plan to activate this rook from h3, rook from h1 to h3. That is a possibility. So let us see what Kasparov does here. c4, again another brilliant move. Now this opens up, vacates the c5 square for knight, and also creates a passer on the queen side. Knight c1. So Karpov attacks the rook here, and now just look at the position here. Look at the solid state of affairs for white. All the pieces on first rank, including queen, both the knights. So this diagram is one of the most iconic positions in almost 200 games played between Karpov and Kasparov. c3. In typical Kasparov style, he counterattacks. Instead of retreating the rook, Kasparov counterattacks by advancing the pawn. Knight takes rook. c2. Queen d4. cd1. Check. King takes d1. And now comes a very simple but very strong move. Knight dc5. Actually, black is offering to exchange the queens. Now usually the attacker wants to avoid an exchange of pieces, let alone queen, but here Kasparov is offering to exchange the queens, but this simple idea will result in a very bright mating attack. Queen d8, rook d8, check. So king c2. Now suppose he goes for king e1, then bishop g4 is very dangerous. Now black is threatening rook d1 mate. So what can white do? Suppose he goes for, say, bishop e2, then bishop takes bishop, king takes bishop, knight g, and the rook is gone. So at this point he goes for king c2, knight f2, and now white resigns. The reason is that there is no satisfactory escape for the rook or king. Say for example, he goes rook g1, bishop f5 check, king b2, knight d1, king a1, and knight b3 mate. Or say for example, after bishop f5 check, he decides to go king c1, then rook d1 check, king b2, and now rook b1. Again this is mate. So what a fascinating game by Kasparov. Really very instructive game which can teach a few good points about attacking the king.